The customs officer slid the metal crate forward, its wheels echoing in the cavernous inspection bay. It looked like nothing more than a shipment of replacement auto parts stamped steel. Bolts, bearings, housings, the kind of cargo that moves through American ports every minute of every day. But as he tapped the side with his flashlight, something felt wrong. He lifted one of the metal casings, weighed it in his hand, and his face hardened. The housing wasn't full of gears. It was full of tightly packed blue tablets, thousands of them. Enough to overwhelm an entire city, one crate, one shipment. Just a single drop in a river that never stops flowing, a river that has quietly shaped America's economy, its communities, its politics, and its future. Most people think of this issue as a simple crime problem. Sirens, night raids, broken families, people struggling on the streets, the human side. But behind that, behind the tragedy and the headlines, sits something far larger and far more organized, a shadow economy worth over $150 billion each year in the United States alone. Bigger than entire industries, bigger than some Fortune 500 companies. This is not chaos. It is an industry, one with producers, logistics chains, financial networks, distribution systems, and a constant stream of customers. And at the top of this hidden economy are groups far more structured and strategic than most people realize. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the 1970s and 1980s, the era when a certain white powder wasn't just a product, it was a cultural wave. Miami became the entry point for massive shipments flowing north. Small planes flew low over the ocean, dropped bales for boats to retrieve, and bribed every official they crossed paths with. The groups running these operations built business empires that generated billions. They influenced politics, built private security forces, and ran their organizations with the efficiency of major corporations. The violence was real, but the money was stronger. And as American demand climbed, their power grew. The economics were brutally simple. Demand never slowed, profit margins were enormous, and the product kept people coming back. What cost only a few $1,000s to produce could bring in tens of thousands once it hit major cities. These organizations made so much cash, they buried pallets of money in warehouses because they couldn't move it fast enough. Their operations were so large, they disrupted regional economies. Most people who talk about the drug problem, understand this part. It was driven by one of the most reliable cash flows in modern history. But that era, as destructive as it was, didn't break America the way the next wave would. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, a new crisis began quietly in doctors' offices across the country. Certain pain medications were promoted aggressively as safe and non-addictive. Prescriptions exploded. Entire communities grew dependent. And when restrictions finally tightened, people who were already hooked didn't magically recover. They sought out cheaper, stronger alternatives on the street. That shift opened the door for synthetic substances. Synthetic products don't need farmland, weather, or giant smuggling routes. They need precursor chemicals, simple equipment, and space to work. A small lab can produce millions of doses. And because synthetic variants are extremely strong, they're incredibly easy to hide inside vehicles, cargo, or the hollow parts of machines. The organizations behind this shift immediately recognized the opportunity. They abandoned agriculture and moved into chemistry. They set up production labs staffed by trained technicians. They sourced ingredients from overseas suppliers. They refined formulas. They manufactured tablets that looked identical to legitimate medications, except they were far more potent and unpredictable. The economics were irresistible. The risk was lower, the profit margins were enormous, and the demand was guaranteed because millions of Americans were already dependent after years of overprescription. And once synthetic pills flooded the market, the crisis exploded. Most people don't realize how advanced these groups have become. They aren't chaotic gangs hiding in the wilderness. They operate like multinational corporations. They have supply chain managers, engineers, accountants, and distribution networks. They use drones to scout encrypted phones to communicate, and sophisticated financial networks to move money around the world without touching traditional banks. Their distribution systems are decentralized and resilient. Their business model is horrifyingly simple. Create a product people can't easily walk away from, and this is where the economic damage hits the hardest. The US workforce has suffered. Millions of able-bodied adults can't work because of dependency, legal issues, or long-term health damage. employers struggle to hire. Manufacturing, construction, transportation, sectors that once relied on reliable labor now fight constant shortages. Productivity falls. Absenteeism rises. Companies spend millions training replacements. It's not just a crime issue, it's a workforce issue. Healthcare systems strain under the pressure. Hospitals treat thousands of emergency cases linked to dependency and withdrawal. Treatment centers overflow. Insurance costs rise. Doctors and nurses face burnout. Rural hospitals, especially, are overwhelmed. Housing markets feel the shock. Dependency leads to instability. Instability leads to homelessness. Homelessness drains city budgets. City budgets raise taxes. Taxes hit businesses. Businesses cut staff. Everything becomes connected. Law enforcement costs soar. Billions go toward policing, courts, incarceration, and border enforcement. Yet the underground economy still grows. Programs fall behind. Rural counties suffer the same as big cities. The problem respects no boundaries. And through all this, the hidden suppliers adapt. They diversify. They experiment with new formulas. They shift transportation routes. They embed their products into legitimate-looking packaging. They launder profits through shell companies, real estate, cryptocurrency, import-export firms, a global financial network running in parallel with the legitimate economy. America remains the largest consumer market, not because of moral weakness, but because of circumstances. High stress, widespread mental health struggles, high exposure to pharmaceuticals, and a massive population spread across thousands of entry points. When demand is consistent and profit margins are astronomical, supply always finds a way in. Now comes the next phase. Hidden groups are testing new technologies, encrypted communication systems, AI-enhanced logistics, autonomous vehicles, drone delivery, and offshore digital banking. They're expanding into counterfeit medications that appear identical to real ones. They no longer operate like criminal gangs. They operate like tech-enabled global enterprises. The economic impact continues to rise. Lost workers, struggling cities, overloaded hospitals, families torn apart, communities destabilized, taxpayers footing the bill. Economists now estimate the total cost: lost productivity, healthcare, enforcement, property damage. Social services reaches over $1 trillion every decade. This is not just a drug crisis. It is a structural economic crisis, and the hidden industry behind it isn't slowing down. It adapts, it innovates, it evolves faster than the systems designed to fight it. This is the economy no one sees, but everyone feels, shaping workplaces, communities, and futures. And understanding it is the first step to understanding what comes next. If this story opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe, and join me in the next story. There's a lot more coming, and you won't want to miss what we uncover next.